everybody, what's going on? And welcome to GNR Central. And today we got a really cool true story episode. So I want to talk about how the city of Chicago may have played a role in the writing of the song Civil War, at least the lyrics for Civil War. So the story goes that the music for Civil War was originally written back in 1988 when the band was on tour in Australia. They hadn't really written the lyrics at that point, but like a lot of Guns N' Roses songs, it was always the music that was normally written first, and then they would add the lyrics later. Now, fast forward to the summer of 1989, Guns N' Roses have been trying to write a follow-up full album to Appetite for Destruction, and they're having trouble doing it. So they decide that they need to get out of LA and get away from all the distractions, and they choose Chicago. So according to the Chicago Tribune, a Tribune reader reached out to say that the band stayed in an apartment near DePaul University. Some or all of Guns N' Roses flopped in a flat across the street from St. Vincent de Paul Parish, Kevin Garvey wrote in an email. We lived a block west with our little kids and definitely noticed the GNR fans who seemed to be sitting on the church step fence grass across the street around the clock hoping to see any of Guns N' Roses members. Guns N' Roses being there seemed odd, but I figured they followed their own rules. So Duff McKagan wrote in his own memoir, It's So Easy and Other Lies, that the first thing we had to do was find a place for the whole band and a couple of our techs to live. We also had a security guard, which was required in our management's eyes. It was probably to protect the public from our antics and not the other way around. Then we had to find a place where we could rehearse and write, and we found 2 apartments above an Italian restaurant across the street from a church off Clark Street. So during the band's time in Chicago, there were a number of places that they were frequently seen at, and a lot of the local newspapers even reported Guns N' Roses sightings back in 1989. So one of those places was the Cabaret, Metro, and Smart Bar. That was basically a band hangout. So according to a June 26, 1989 Chicago Tribune article, the band arrived in Chicago that summer in attempts to their follow-up album to Appetite for Destruction and GNR Lies. As part of the story, Joe Shanahan, co-owner of the Metro, confirmed that the band had been seen at the Smart Bar. But he said, but they're not recording here or practicing here, Shanahan said, dispelling reports to the contrary. But several Metro employees said the practice sessions took place in empty rooms above the Metro, the former home of the Smart Bar. All I know is they've been downstairs having a good time in the bar, Shanahan said. They seem like they like the atmosphere. The second spot where Guns N' Roses were frequenting was a pizza place called Leona's. So even the Chicago Tribune wrote an article on June 26, 1989, saying that the band had arrived in Chicago, of course, to do their follow-up album. As part of their story, a man named Chuck Corey claims to have seen the band chowing down on pizza and pasta at the Lakeview restaurant Leona's on June 15, 1989. He said when they walked in, one of the waitresses looked at them and said, "Righteous metal dudes, you got to be in Guns N' Roses," Corey said. When she came back and someone told her who they actually were, the guys in the band laughed, introduced themselves, and gave her a pretty hard time about it. They sat at the table at the front window and even joined in when another table started singing Happy Birthday. They were singing off-key on purpose, hamming it up. Actually, it was kind of disappointing. They were pretty quiet, not at all what you'd expect from their reputation. No one bothered them, and they just ate, paid their bill, and left. Limousines, they all got into a Ford Aerostar and took off. Like I said, pretty disappointing. After changing hands, the restaurant now has a different owner and a different name. Another place that Guns N' Roses were frequenting was the Kingston Mines. So Metro Star Bar owner Shanahan says he and Slash would get together late at night and visit music clubs. One night at the Blues Bar, Shanahan recalls Slash sitting in with a band for a blistering solo of classic blues track Stormy Monday. About the experience, Shanahan says there was a lot of Jack Daniels involved that night, but he was wicked. Now, during the time that the band was in Chicago, it was mostly Duff, Slash, and Steven who were there. Izzy was kind of in and out. He was trying to get off drugs and trying to get clean. And then Axl didn't really show up till the very end of their time in Chicago. So in 1990, Axl gave an interview where he shed some light on exactly when he arrived in Chicago and how long he was there for. So in the interview, he said, "We got into fights in Chicago when we went there last year to escape LA and try to get some writing done. Everyone's timing schedules were weird and we were showing up at different times. But when I would show up, I was like, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's do one of your Slash, okay, now let's hear one of Duff's." And then everybody would decide then that's when everyone would decide I was a dictator being a completely selfish dick, you know. But F, man, as far as I was concerned, we were on a roll. Slash is complaining we're getting nothing done, and I'm like, what do you mean? We just put down 6 new parts for songs. We've got all this stuff done in like a couple of weeks. And he was like, yeah, but I've been sitting here for a month waiting on my ass for you to show up. I'd driven cross country in my truck to Chicago from LA, and it had taken me weeks. So according to Axl's timeline, he probably showed up in Chicago around early July and stayed there till the middle of the month, because on July 21st or the 22nd, he was in New York City with Izzy Stradlin with the band The Cult, and he jammed with the band on stage. So he played with Matt Sorum actually as well. So this was before Matt Sorum was a member of GNR when he was still in the cult. So they were jamming from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. playing Aerosmith, Stones, and Black Sabbath covers. So let's talk about how Chicago sort of relates to the song Civil War. So if Axl was in Chicago on July 9th, and we all know that he probably reads the news if you guys have been following his Twitter account for the last 5 or 6 years. He's been tweeting pretty political stuff and talks about stuff going on in the news. While he may not talk about it a lot on stage, it's definitely on his social media accounts. Now, this is an article that was published in the World section of the Chicago Tribune on July 9th, 1989. And there's a long-form version of the article, which you guys can also read. So the headline says, "More war will bring peace, says Peru's Maoists after 15,000 die." So the article says the young guerrilla officer who gave his name as Jorge chose his words carefully as he tried to explain the strategy behind the selective annihilation. You guys may see where I'm going with this. "All popular war is violent," he said softly. "We use selective annihilation of mayors and government officials, for example, to destroy the presence of the state and create a vacuum. Then we fill that vacuum." He sat back and let that sink in. "Violence is an integral part of an armed struggle," he said. "As popular war advances, peace gets closer. Once only more popular war will bring peace." Dressed neatly in a sweater and slacks, Jorge's middle-class looks and pleasant demeanor belied his chilling doctrine of destruction, driving Maoists guerrillas as they attempt to impose their vision of pure communist utopia on Peru. So you guys probably recognize that line from the song Civil War. And I want to give a big shout out to Black Star on the MyGNR forums. He's the one who uncovered this article. I didn't even know that this is possibly where he actually came up with the lyrics to this part of the song, or maybe Duff did. But I thought there's just a strange coincidence that, they're in Chicago rehearsing the same time that they're in the city. The Chicago Tribune publishes this article, and then the quote ends up in the song. Like, it had been known for quite a while that the quote was from a South American rebel fighter, but the exact origins of where Axl may have seen it, I never really knew until now, possibly. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Put them in the comment section below, and be sure to hit like and share the video as well. Be sure to subscribe if you love GNR as much as I do, and go check us out on gnrcentral.com. Take care.
Hey, this is Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses, and you're watching GNR Central. Yeah!